Welcome back to some more Create Integrated. Now, over the last few episodes, we've been dabbling a lot in the tech side of things. For example, setting up our Steam engines, a little bit of resource automation, and also setting up a new storage system, and, well, getting wireless charging automated. But now there is one thing that I've been kind of neglecting, and that's a little bit of magic. Yeah, I've been missing out on Ars Nouveau, and there's a lot of cool things that we can actually set up and get started with Ars Nouveau, including resource automation down the line. Now, in the latest update, I did include a new chapter which does kind of describe how you can set up automation for all kinds of different resources that are going to allow you to automate things even further in the future. And each one of these is going to be making one of the base building materials that can then be crushed down into resources. And then those resources even have byproducts when washed. And if we plan on doing any of those, some of them are made a whole lot easier if we have Ars under our belt. So now this is ultimately going to be one of the buildings that we are going to use to house Ars. And it's probably going to end up expanding. As of right now, this is just sort of like a laid out template. These are going to be some containers that are going to look like they're holding source, or at least that's my vision of this whole thing. But what we need to do to actually get started with Ars, well, that's a whole thing in itself. So over on the main progression line, our world is currently sort of void of magic. We don't actually have any biomes from Ars. We don't have any trees that just, naturally spawn from Ars. Instead, we have to start from nothing. Now, thankfully, we were able to empower ourselves just a little bit and make an Ars spellbook, a very basic one once we got access to the fairy core. But now this is where we hit our first roadblock. To make anything from Ars, we are going to need archwood, quite a bit of archwood actually. And there's a couple of ways you can get it. You can either go about it by spouting lumazine onto the actual planks, or what you could actually do is loot a bunch of archwood planks, which thankfully we have looted a ton of archwood planks. Now, one of the ways to get some lumazine is to harvest a bit of these sweet berries here, toss them into the haunting setup, which they will then turn into glow berries. And then using a setup much like this, where we have our regular mixer leading into a pump that will pull fluids out and into a spout, should allow us to do this. So to make the actual lumazine, we toss this in, the fluid will get created, and then we'll start spouting it over here. And that's where we can take planks, and any plank, for example, spruce plank, we can place that on there, and it's going to start converting it into the archwood planks that we're going to need. But like I said, you can loot a ton of these, and look at that. We have like 410 just from the little looting that I've done so far. Then with those archwood planks, we can turn that immediately into an imbuement chamber, or more than one imbuement chamber. Now, typically what you would do is you would take like some lapis, or you would take something else. Like you could take, I believe, the amethyst. You can toss that in here and just let time happen. And you can see right here that the crafting progress is going to increase without anything added to it. And it will eventually just turn into, well, a source gem. Now, once this does convert, it's going to be really easy for us to fully automate this with, for example, a barrel. So we can take a couple of barrels. I'm going to set these over here, and then we'll use a smart chute. So a smart chute will be really nice for this, and we'll place the imbuement chamber right on top. And then on top of that, we can just use a hopper. Doesn't really matter. Hopper's got some nice slots, and we'll filter specifically the source gem. And then we just fill this up with lapis, and just over time, this barrel is going to end up filling up with source gems. Now, we'll be able to speed this process up very, very soon, but as of right now, basic automation. Now, source gems are also some of those things that we can definitely loot. And luckily, I've gotten lucky along my journeys. But now for the true magic, the fluid source link. Right off the bat, we are introduced to how we're going to generate source, so that way we can actually make our first bit of source stone. So then we can do whatever we want with it. And this is a very, very powerful introduction, or at least I thought it was a powerful introduction, basically saying, hey, we can make a fluid source link, we can also make some source jars, and we can make a source condenser, and it allows us to get liquefied source, which we're going to need. But also, we can just produce from a liquid source, which is really powerful. Now, making this fluid source link is really going to get the ball rolling. It's going to allow us to start making a significant amount of source. But we are going to need to run some cables all the way over here. And I do want to get this hooked in so that way we can actually start sending lava directly from our refined storage system to this. And so you know what? I think this would be a good time to kind of show you a really cool mod that is also in here that is called the pipe connector mod. So if I want to connect a cable from here over to here, I just need to select the 2 points. So we make the pipe connector very, very, very simple for us to make. And then we shift right click, or we actually have to have the cable in the offhand. Shift right click to set position 1. And then over here, we can click the bottom of this to set position 2. And you can see it's giving us sort of this outline of where we want this. Now, I don't want this here, so I am actually going to change the position by holding shift and scroll wheeling. And so I actually want this to be right down here at the level the cable's already existing at, then to bring it up. And whenever I click this, so whenever I open this menu up by shift right clicking and hit place pipes, it's going to automatically place all of those pipes by pulling them out of my inventory and getting them lined up perfectly. Like, that is beautiful. Well, it didn't line up perfectly here, but still, you can see the power of this. With the cables moved over, I can use an exporter, and we'll just tap that into the bottom, and the exporter is going to send things out of our refined storage system. And because we have lava in here, I can just drag lava in its fluid source into this, and it should start to send to here, and is going to be consumed up, and is going to be creating source. But we do need a jar to send it to. So a source jar is something that we definitely want to get made. And it is going to require some of our planks. And there we go. So now we have a source jar, which I can just put right on top or to the side or really anywhere, I think, as of right now. Let's go ahead and put that there. And this should start to send source to the jar. There it goes. And then right now that source is going to be transferred out of there and is going to help accelerate this process of making source gems. Now, this location is very temporary until we can get some more infrastructure set up. But as of right now, yeah, we're producing these quite quickly now. Now, another block we're going to need is a source condenser, because we're also going to want to condense this source into a liquid form. By putting the source condenser nearby, I think within 5 blocks or so, it's going to start turning this into actual liquid. And then we can use a bucket to pull this out, or really anything that allows us to interact with fluid sources. So there we go. Now we have a liquefied source bucket. We can also put it in here, and we can even store it in our refined storage system. But now with that all under our belt, like, making something that can make source gems should be a lot easier. So we now have the same setup running over here. So the source link, filling the source jar, which fills up the condenser. We can then pull from the condenser with a mechanical pump, and I can carry over my power from here, send it through these, which will allow this to pump the source fluid into the actual basin. And then we do need to get this spinning in the correct direction, and we do need a shaft going up here, so that way we can get that spinning. Let's see, can I add another gearbox here to make it go in the right direction? Beautiful. Okay, so with all of this in place, we can now put stuff like lapis in here instead. The lapis is then going to go in, and then that should produce source gems a whole lot quicker. And man, I tell you, just gonna love the beauty of Create and also blending this all together. By the way, the source liquid is courtesy of a mod called Starbunkle Mania. And I think the intended purpose of like having liquid source is so that Starbunkles can carry the liquid source around, but I'm using it in a much more creative way. Now, I think we've definitely mastered this section, and look at that, we got ourselves a nice little essence here. Now, making source stone is going to require taking some stone and pressing it with more liquid source. So you know what I'm going to do here instead, I'm going to move my pump back one, and I'm going to move this setup back one. And instead we are going to pump from here, so that way we can use pipes, and we can carry pipes all through the entire area. And for right now, I mean, this is probably going to be more than enough, I think, to carry everything from the source container. Yeah. Now the setup for stone is going to be very similar to the one that we just did. So kind of a modular design here. I've got the pipe actually leading over. And so all I have to do now is connect the pipe in here, and that should send the liquid source exactly where we need it, right into this basin. Okay. So now with that, if I just throw stone in here, as soon as 8 stone is in here, I believe it will send it. No, this is where it's another example where we're going to have to prevent it from making this, and instead we're going to have to use like a filter, or at least until we get one of them. That's why I think having like at least one of these setups is a good idea. We need to make a regular create filter. Okay, so I'm going to grab this, and source stone is what we're going to add to this. Basic source stone, if I can find it. There it is. And as soon as we define that, that's the only recipe that will be allowed to be made inside of this now. So let's take more stone. So I have an even stack. Put that in there. And now it will wait until 8 and it won't do any other recipe. Beautiful. And there's our 8 source stone. Now, after getting our hands on some source stone, things really start to open up because we can start to make just about anything now from Ars. And so really we're just limited by Ars itself. So this kind of the starting point, and honestly makes making all of this stuff a whole lot faster. Now, speaking of getting faster, there's a neat little trick that you can do. If you make an arcane core, you can actually use this for villagers. All we've got to do is slap down a trader here, throw a villager in it, and put an arcane core inside, and this guy is ready to start doing some trades. There's like an amethyst trade right here. Like some of this bastion fruit can provide emeralds. But there's a whole lot of different trades that you can do, which is very, very handy. For example, like just this tier 2, you get 8 warp scrolls out of that. Warp scrolls are really handy. You can basically set home with them. So I can shift right click. This is now bound to that location. Whenever I right click, it just teleports me right there. It does consume it, but later on there is a way to make them permanent. Okay, so we've got ourselves a villager, but I really do want to dabble into the arcane. And for that, we are going to need an enchanting apparatus. Now, the enchanting apparatus can be placed on the ground normally, but I had a wild idea. What if I built up a secondary layer? And so I'm utilizing these iron supports to hold up the catwalk, and I've added a catwalk here, and I plan on this building being, taller. But I've never built the enchanting apparatus upside down. And I kind of wanted to see if I could build it upside down and maybe have it be like a chandelier almost, where this is placed here, and then the enchanting apparatus is placed on the bottom. And then we could just have, I don't know, some of the platforms maybe floating. I'm unsure if they can be placed upside down. They may actually be able to. Let's see. Can they? They absolutely can. Oh, this is going to be cool. And you know what? After tinkering a little bit, I think this is just the chaos that I need. So up here, it isn't perfect. And that's sort of the goal, is to make it look like this really obscure sort of chandelier. But in reality, we only need for right now about 8 platforms for most of the recipes. So long as we have a mixture of platforms and pedestals, and they are within range, we should be good. And I think this one is still within range of the arcane apparatus. Sorry, enchanting apparatus. Now, I even added a little source jar over here, and I think this is within range because some recipes do require source. So we will need to provide that. Now, one of the first things we do need to craft, I can just place this on any pedestal and then also place the brass and then click a stick on here. And look at that. It is actually working, and it works upside down. That is fantastic. I don't think I've ever used this thing upside down. I don't think I've ever been as creative. Oh, the item was even upside down. That is hilarious. But yes, I do want the Dominion one because this allows me to essentially change and modify a ton of things within Ars, including choosing where source can go, and is going to be necessary in the future. Next on the list is definitely Mage Bloom seeds. This is going to be incredibly important for us to get up and running. The Mage Bloom seeds are used to be able to make Mage Bloom, which we can then break down utilizing Create to get Mage Fiber, and Mage Fiber is used to create tons of things, including parchment, which we are going to need to be able to make those codec entries to unlock more features inside of our spellbook. And I do want to get this growing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and utilize a fairy core hoe for right now, but you know what? A blaze? We could actually upgrade this to blaze tier. It does actually speed up crop growth. Ah, yes, this will help it grow a little bit faster. I don't think that it auto harvests at this level, but this is something that we'll have to keep in mind if it does. Either way, I want to get this planted, and I definitely want to start growing some. Now take this, toss it in here, and like I said, that gets us a ton of Mage Bloom fiber. With this Mage Bloom fiber, I can finally use it to start to upgrade our gear. And this seems kind of odd. I'm going to be using a mixture of the actual battle mage gear, which is going to be a little bit more defensive and utilize diamond, but I still want the Arcanist hat. This thing is just iconic and looks absolutely amazing. The cool thing is if you already have enchants and you do this, you will keep those enchants. And so now I have this nice looking gear that I can actually start to show off now. After all of that crafting, everything is now ready to go. And just take a look at that. Ah, beautiful. But we can go even further than this and we can actually make this gear be any color we want. And for some reason, I just love the idea of like the boots being dark, pants being a little bit darker, and it just slowly works its way with a gradient all the way up into the hat. And we end up with this beautiful white gradient going from darker, which of course would be a little dirtier from walking around, all the way up to light. And it even matches our spellbook now. Oh, now everything is starting to make sense. Now, speaking of spellbook, we can actually upgrade this to the next tier. We do have blaze rods. We could have done this a while ago, but now we have access to tier 2 spells. We just can't craft any just yet. Oh, and by the way, yes, it does appear that the Mage Bloom seed is indeed doing the auto harvesting. So this crop at the blaze level is auto harvesting. So to make sure that we can collect this, we do want to set up an item collector. I'm going to go ahead and show you the display here, and we can get this sort of centered. That's kind of where I want it. I want this centered right where that trapdoor's at, and then I can expand the distance, and this will automatically pick up things off the ground. So we'll increase the range like this until we have it quite a ways. And then I'm going to go ahead and lower this down to make sure the speed is fast enough to pick it up. So every tick, and that should pick this up. We'll just make sure that this range is completely set. Beautiful. Now, anything within this range will be automatically picked up and just transported into this barrel, which is what we want. Otherwise, our drops from the auto harvesting, well, they just get deleted. Oh, now back to our spellbook and actually making spells. We are going to need to produce some essences in order to do this. We also need some more blank parchment, and to be able to make more parchment, I'm probably going to need more seeds. And if this is auto harvesting, that'll be really nice. So that way, well, this will just end up automatically collecting. We're just going to need a bit more of it. And to make this a little bit easier on myself, we have an enchanting apparatus. I just place some hoppers on there with some seeds, and then we'll just fill this into a few of these, and that will automatically kick this off and allow for some auto crafting. And you can see how this is very easy to set up auto crafting for any recipe, really. Now, besides all of the actual plant life, we are also going to need essences. And thankfully, automation of essences is a lot easier because I added looping recipes. So my idea behind this is that once you've learned magic, you should be able to just keep imbuing that same thing with magic to be able to reproduce it. And so that is exactly what's happening here. We're taking source and we are duplicating it. And then all you have to do is essentially send one back while the other one processes on and becomes bulk. And you send it back into the loop to continue over and over again. Of course, you could still do the normal method, but this should be basically a one-time thing, whereas this will be more permanent, and also you can make them more in bulk. So now I just simply have to go through the process of getting all of the essences that I, well, haven't gotten already via quests. And most of these just require 3 items that need to go on a pedestal. I recommend putting this near a source jar, and then you just put in a source gem, and that is going to craft up, especially, it's going to craft up a whole lot faster so long as there's source nearby. And that should turn into your base essence. Here, for example, is the air essence. And this one right here is the earth essence. Then we have fire essence. And there we go. Last but not least, some water essence. Now, the process of looping these is where things get a little bit more complicated. So to be able to keep these in a reasonable amount of space, making this compact is where things get a little bit more difficult. So let's go ahead and talk about how we can actually loop within Create. So one way is to take our basin. Let's just assume we have fluid going in with a pipe, and then that item gets flung out. Well, we're going to have to split it off. And one good way we can split things off is by using an andesite tunnel. The cool thing about the andesite tunnel is when multiple items go through this, it always will split off one to the sides. So it'll take it and it'll send it off here. But unfortunately, to keep this compact, it would also send it over here, which is not exactly what we want to do. And so it may get a little bit more expensive, but I think using the brass tunnel will be better because we can actually filter. So let's say that we have a depot that is over here, and we want to collect these ingredients. We want to use like a funnel to send and loop the ingredients back in. So we would put this here, make sure that's set to go in. And then what we would do is use like a weighted ejector, and the weighted ejector kind of works like a depot that allows you to fling items. And so this right here now has a filter slot. And so we can say, hey, only allow it to go on this one side. Even if there is a depot over here, we can just simply block this and like put some random item in here to make sure nothing actually goes in there. And then we can set this to split mode. And since it's always going to have two, we can make sure that it does split this off and keeps that rotating. You know what? To make this even simpler, we can just leave two spots open and then make sure this is filtered to some random thing on the right-hand side, because we actually want the item to be deposited on the left. So all of these slots, I mean, if we filter those, it's essentially blocking this so that way we'll never have anything pop in on the right side. Now, one thing I did notice when also setting these up is like right here, it's actually pretty close, but as soon as we go here, boy, that really has to throw these items like way up in the air for them to work. So we have to keep that in mind. This is almost like, I mean, how many blocks up is that? It's really hard for me to tell. I mean, it's about 2 blocks or so. And if I was going to run pipes directly on top, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. Instead, I'm going to have to bring these pipes like all the way up here, at least like up here. And this still may be in the way, which is probably going to lead me to need to, actually send the fluid through the bottom instead of the top. Because remember, on top of each one of these is going to be a mixer. I mean, you know what? Instead of on the floor, we could give like some detail, some character to the back of the building. Like just by having these pipes run. And even on the inside, I feel like this is going to give this whole building some character, because I do want to run these all separately like this. Now, another issue that I needed to keep in mind is I cannot use, for example, these cogwheels and stretch them across. And that is because this will bounce the item off and it just tosses it right back at me. So I have to come up with another solution for this. And so I'm thinking what we could do is just run like a shaft all the way through here and run a belt line possibly. This should get it all spinning, and you can have them sideways. So yeah, I mean, that does work, but can the item still make it over it? Oh, and it does. Now it works. Oh, that's beautiful. We got to add some color to this. So I'm actually going to dye this belt that's running back here magenta. Yeah, just to make it look like it's something different. But you know what? I decided to actually go ahead and raise this and also put this a bit higher. I thought it looked a little bit nicer being actually able to see the mixers themselves. This I did raise up from the source over here, but I think this is about ready to go. I do have pumps on the back. So if all goes well and I place this in, we should hopefully have source getting pulled all the way through this entire thing. And I'm hoping that we'll end up with every single one of these filled. And we have every single one of them filled. So I guess this is the moment of truth to kind of get this started. All we have to do is put in our first one into the mix and hope that this flings it appropriately. And there it goes. Look at that. So it sends it over here. This time, though, it didn't fling it on. Oh, I wonder why the weighted ejector didn't fling that time. Let's try it one more time. Just make sure that this does function. Something weird about the weighted ejector not ejecting now. Yeah, honestly, I have no idea why this is not functioning. It just seems to stop randomly. Which is not ideal. Now, it does work when I'm on it. And then when I try to manually put something on here, it still doesn't want to eject, which is very odd, very weird. And so, if this isn't going to work, I've got to find another solution. And so, as simple as it may sound, just another belt system that is going in the opposite direction will also work. Or so I thought, because the brass tunnels aren't even recognizing the fact that there is a place for it to send ingredients out to. And you know what? It has come to it. Honestly, this is probably going to be one of the coolest looking setups. I'm just going to use a mechanical arm. Mechanical arm can rip from the depot, take items from here, and then it can deposit it, and it can be put upside down, and will also be the block that carries the signal, carries the stress through all of our mixers. So with everything back filtered the way it was, let's give this a shot again. We put that in there. That should loop, split, and look at that. It sends it into the funnel and keeps looping as it should. And then last but not least, we do want to make sure that once we get all of these loops started, they have somewhere to go. And there we go, brass funnel. I think I'm so ready for this. So now we can kick everything off by simply placing these on here. And then our big worry is just, are we going to have enough source? Because I guarantee this is going to drain very, very quickly. Yeah. But you know what? I think that is just a problem for another day. This is absolutely fantastic looking. And we can always add another setup over here, maybe a couple other setups, or even add them up here that allows it to just be pumped. Because all we got to do is just supply lava to source jar, and yeah, this is just going to produce it. Also, another nice thing, when this is completely backed up, it will just stop running. It's not going to like overflow and overproduce. It will cease to function, which is exactly what you would want. You know, I think overall this turned out way better than I was expecting. And I've barely even gotten the entire building set in. This time around, I wanted to try building from the inside out, which seems like a weird way to do it, but there are multiple ways that you can choose to build. This one, I built the inside and then I built the building around it. This one, I sort of laid out a foundation to stay within, and then now I'm building literally inside of that foundation to make it fit. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go about building, but this is one of them. We still have the building to sort of build out, and there's a lot more to Ars that I really want to get into. Mainly though, I want to be able to make more spells, and so that's why this is now up and running, and soon we are going to have plenty of these essences to be able to automate with and do many other things with. So I'm pretty excited about that. Each one of these things have their own little quirks, right? Then they can do all kinds of different things. So it's definitely going to be worth playing around with. Like this one can transform blocks into all kinds of different ones. Yeah, there's all kinds of fun things we can do. So now I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and hopefully you're looking forward to the episodes to come. And if you are, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And well, give this video, guys, a huge thumbs up. And with that being said, it's now time for me to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks, well, that amazing thanks is going to go out to Success Farmer. Thank you so much for your amazing support and choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting in one of the best ways possible. Thank you guys all so very much. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. And as always, thanks for watching. And also thanks for putting up with me during this episode, as I was definitely sick. Bye.